So I want to talk about this concept of a twin flame, and people talk about it a lot. If you go on YouTube, and the way that I've most heard it be described, and there are so many different descriptions of it, is like your twin flame is your soul in another body, tends to be feminine, masculine, that if you find them and unite in this lifetime, it is the most insane, magnetic love story of all time. It is real life Romeo and Juliet. But not everyone's going to meet their twin flame, and it's going to bring up the most of your shadows. So some people end up with their soulmates, which we have multiple soulmates in our lifetime. They can be platonic or romantic, but it's not as sparkly of a love as a twin flame. So that's kind of how I've heard it. I'm curious how you've heard it. And is this true?
Yeah. Oh my goodness, I love this topic. People get really mad at me when I talk about this. There's really caveat. Like if you're like a diehard for this concept, like you're not gonna like what I have to say. But I think it's such an important thing to discuss because it can be a trap, right? Like what I have heard is that, similar to what you heard, but it's like your soul is split in two and then half goes into their body and half goes into yours. And then you have to find each other. And then it's often super chaotic and it's a roller coaster, but it's because you guys are like meant to be to heal together and all of these things. And but I find that people really use that to stay in very toxic environments and very unsafe situations too.
Yeah, it sounds like trauma bonding.
It is trauma bonding with a
Yeah.
pretty spiritual package, right? It's like,
Yes.
how can I make this spiritual? And
Mhm.
we do that a lot. We do it a
Mhm.
lot. Like we try to package everything up spiritually. And fair enough, if something has a spiritual meaning to you, then that's yours. And if it's not actually making you better in the world, if you don't have more energy to give and to be of service to yourself and to others, then that's not a sacred relationship. I don't think that's very sacred. The reality to me is that I believe we are all whole already. I don't think that my soul was half and then Ben's soul was half and then somehow we had to find each other and blow each other's lives up in order to become whole. The whole idea that we are incomplete and half a person until we meet the one is exactly why I wrote Becoming the One, because we have this idea that, I'm looking for my other half and I'm looking to feel whole, which is what we all want. We all want to feel whole, even if we don't put it in those terms. And yet we think that, partnership or romantic love and validation externally is how to get it. And really, when we approach love from wholeness, I'm already whole, you're already whole, let's do this thing together. There's a big difference in the energetics of that type of love and the potency of that type of connection with two mature whole beings who know their worth and aren't looking to be completed and want to be together because together is better, you know? And so I don't discount that we have soulmate bonds. We for sure do. I mean, to be honest with you, I also think, your postman could be your soulmate. And because it's not, for me, a soulmate isn't always somebody that you even have a deep karmic relationship with. Sometimes for me, I've seen people who, for some reason, they're in my bubble throughout my life. Like there's one woman who she's a twin, and I remember when I lived in a different city and I would see her checking me out at a grocery store all the time. And then years later, like many years later, I remembered her. I saw her at a festival in a completely like way different part of the world. And then when I moved to this little island, I started seeing her again. Right. And these are like, and I'm like, oh, you're in my soul cluster. Like you're probably a person who my soul knew at one point in, that's how I see it. I think our pets are our soulmates too. For me, it's like not diluting the magic, but almost taking the power away from this idea that there's like one person out there who can complete us. Because I think when we have that belief that there's just one person out there, well, that's a pretty scary thought then. If the relationship isn't healthy, or if we're chasing them and they're not making themselves available, but we have this idea that they're the one and there's only one person out there, then we're not in the seat of our power. We're not really choosing from worth. We're choosing from lack. We're choosing from scarcity and fear. And so I just don't like any spiritual concept that limits us to not being whole in ourselves. Like, I believe we're born whole and worthy. We're not born broken. So for me, it just feels like a way for us to sort of hide out. And so I choose not to take on the whole twin flame thing. Ultimately, we all have to decide what feels right for us and what we believe to be true. But I would just caution anyone who's in this really turbulent or roller coaster like relationship who's saying, oh, well, I have to stay in this because it's my twin flame and like we have a soul contract. You know what? Sometimes the growth is in actually learning to claim ourselves and just say, no, this isn't right for me.